everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, and I'm incredibly honored to be back with Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut, Democrat of Connecticut. We interviewed her before Christmas last year about the tax bill, and that video got such a tremendous response from our 5.5 million Twitter impression readers in December. We were just delighted when her office very kindly said she was willing to talk to us again, and not just us, but you. This is the really exciting thing. There are so few elected officials who make time to address, you all instead of just the gatekeepers. So we really appreciate that. And as you recall, Congresswoman DeLauro is from Connecticut's 3rd Congressional District. She's been serving for 27 years.
27 years.
That's right. And what we're here today to ask her about, many of you have had questions about guns, especially in the news, and then we'll do a follow-up video about the tax bill. So thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you again. Thanks very, very much. And I'm delighted to talk with your viewers.
It's a great pleasure for us. So, if you were to just dive right in, there have been horrible headlines, obviously. I'm saying something that we all know. It seems like in this country it happens, the same story happens over and over and over, all over the nation, terrible shootings. And now there's a plethora of movements to restrict gun sales and pushback from Second Amendment advocates. It's a very common story, but you want to say what about that?
Well, I think we have reached I probably tried to say a tipping point. I think Parkland and the outcry from the soul of our high school students really changed the dynamic in a way that we have not seen for a while. At least that's what my hope is. I want to be optimistic. But for one, as a member of Congress, and I will continue when something tragic happens, to stand and pray, and my thoughts and my prayers, obviously, they're with the families, with the victims, with the loved ones who are left behind. But we are at a point on this gun issue that this is not enough, in my view. I have been a strong proponent of background checks and closing the loopholes.
What do you mean by loopholes?
The pieces in the law that allow someone to be able to purchase a gun, to get it to someone else, and also where there's no trail of who owns the gun, so we can't track it down.
Is that true? Does that really happen? Like someone in one state can buy a gun, hand it or ship it to someone in another state, and there's no paper trail?
And there's no paper trail. There is no paper trail. Now, those things need to be done, but from my perspective, and this is something I've espoused for a long time, but I feel very, very strongly about it. I believe we need to go back to what we did earlier on, and that is to ban assault weapons.
So
to ban the AR-15.
I learned when I was researching legislation that this very, very controversial step, banning assault rifles, actually has been done before.
Yes, I was here. I was in
Tell us
Congress
about that.
During the crime bill.
Okay.
When we passed
and what
the
year
ban,
was that? Roughly.
Oh my gosh, when I first was here.
80s?
The 90s.
The 90s.
It was in the 90s. It was in the 90s. And I voted for that bill. We have seen, and literature has shown, the data has shown, that there was a decrease.
Really?
Some would say that isn't the case, but the point is, my view is, let's ban
it's been done before.
Weapons. It's been done before. And we also need to ban those high-capacity magazines that allow the rapid fire.
Yes.
I also sit on the subcommittee of appropriations, which deals with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which has, for almost 20 years now, there's been a chilling effect on our ability to do research on gun violence. From an amendment that was introduced by a former colleague who has now since passed on. His name was Jay Dickey of Arkansas, and he said that any research that led to gun control the CDC could not perform.
Wow.
Now, while it was not a prohibition,
Such a gag order on knowledge.
it's a gag order. You said it right.
It seems to me like wherever you stand on Second Amendment issues, on gun control, that being opposed to more information in an information era is kind of extraordinary.
It is.
It shouldn't be
really
surprising
is.
just to gather more data.
You know, there's work that's been done. A radiologist, name is Heather Scher. She wrote an article in the Atlantic, which I would commend people to read. And she talked about, look, I'm not a scientist, and she talked about the AR-15 and the velocity at which it strikes the body. And what she found when she was treating the Parkland victims is that the organs were irreparable. There was nothing that could be done to save someone. And that is not a weapon that we need to have anyone have access to.
So let me ask you this, because one of the things I love about coming here and talking to you, and we're nonpartisan, so I would love to come and talk to any of your colleagues across the aisle who also, give us the invitation. But what I love is that you're explaining things to a nation that's truly polarized and gets polarized information streams. So what I want to ask you is, when you're sitting in a committee with gun advocates or Second Amendment defense advocates, what reason do they give for why we need to allow assault weapons as well as like basic arms that you might need to defend your family or to hunt? What's that reason?
Well, they view it that if you move in this direction to ban
slippery
assault
slope.
weapons, it's the slippery slope that you're going to take.
But then why
people's
can't
guns
I have a
away
tank
from
in my
them.
backyard? Like, isn't there some limitation at
Right.
some point, or a bomb?
That doesn't get through. It becomes an infringement on their rights. And though many would agree that this is not a weapon that one goes hunting with, you don't have much to show for it if you do, and that there are various kinds of assault weapons, semi-assault weapons that you know, and how many bans are you going to have on which of the assault weapons? And so they turn it into an argument that, or an argument that said, well, this is not going to get at the problem of someone who has mental health issues, or etc. You know, the point of all of this is that if you listen to the debate, you will hear said that, well, this kind of a gun safety measure wouldn't address this problem.
Right.
This one wouldn't address that problem.
Right.
So there's not a silver bullet.
Right.
No one is suggesting that there is. But for my purposes, I think we have to have a strategy which says, let's ban assault weapons,
Yes.
ban the high-capacity magazine, let's do the background checks,
Right.
let's close the loopholes, let's provide services,
Mental health
services,
Well,
and the resources for mental health services. We ought to have a school counselor in every single school. It's not about arming teachers, but having a school counselor, professional social work and counseling within each of our schools. We need to conduct the research on gun violence prevention. That is a basket.
Yeah.
That is a strategy of moving forward.
Right.
We're not saying this.
Right.
Let's integrate
Right,
all
right.
of this and try to move forward to address an issue in which there will be breaches, but at least we will cut back on the mass shootings and killings. Gun violence in this country, every single day we lose, people.
So let me drill down on those 6 recommendations you just made. So is there a bill that you're promoting that might have some of these remedies in it?
Some of the remedies are there, and I'm supportive of all of the legislation, including the assault weapons ban that my colleague David Cicilline just introduced, and I am on it. There are so many others
Right.
who have introduced legislation to address these issues, and I am supportive of these efforts.
So people listening, so we have people from all different backgrounds listening, people listening who want to support you and your colleagues in these, what many might think are common sense modifications of extreme access to guns, right? They might want to say at this point, well, Naomi and Congresswoman DeLauro, how do I support those sponsors of those bills? And of course, we have the technology to really target in on those states. So what states have people introducing legislation that people should look at? Do you want me to circle back with your staff?
Let's circle back, and I can post
DailyClout?
all of the bills
That's
that are in the
wonderful.
Senate and bills that are in the House of
And
Representatives.
I'd love to ask your staff, and I'm going to, for Congresswoman DeLauro's like top 3 or top 5 gun control bills, because we have the technology to post them right online and have people then tweet their
Excellent.
sponsors and let them know their support, mobilize support, show that there's support.
That's
Yeah.
the way to do this, but you know what's,
What else can we do?
particularly, when I started, I talked about something of a tipping point.
Yes.
And
What
that
did you mean by that?
is the reaction of our high school students.
Right.
And that's all over the country.
Right.
I have high school students.
Yeah, my son is
in
coming to
Connecticut.
March.
In Connecticut, a young woman in Richfield, Connecticut, her name's Lane Murdoch.
Uh-huh.
She and a couple of other friends in Starbucks sat down. They're moving toward a walkout of students on April 20th, which
Really?
is the anniversary of Columbine.
Oh, wow.
We're trying to get them now in conversation with the Parkland students who are not going to take no for an answer.
Interesting.
And these kids are talking about never giving up. And that's the attitude
Wow.
that we need. They are unafraid. They're standing tall because it's something that they believe in. We need to, and I've said this to my colleagues, we need to follow their lead or get out of their way.
So that's beautiful for those who support gun control. That's great. Those who are worried about what they see as the left confiscating their guns and violating the Second Amendment might say, well, what assurances do I have that if you start with what seem like these very moderate reforms, like banning the magazines, closing the loopholes, the 6 or 7 items that you addressed, how do I know? Like, I hang out with a lot of soldiers now, or former military people, because my partner was in the military, and they're lovely men and women, which I didn't know them that well because I lived in my own kind of liberal urban bubble, and now I'm kind of meeting other kinds of people, and they have guns, which is hard for me to get, but bear with me. They're very responsible. They don't think any crazy person should get guns. They think people should be trained, but a lot of them believe that if someone breaks into their home, or if they need to defend their family, or for hunting, these are important, and Second Amendment, that these are things the founders left people at a time when mercenaries were breaking into their homes. Let's just remember, for the sake of balance, what the origin of the Second Amendment was. There were soldiers breaking into people's homes, confiscating their stuff. It's the same origin as the Fourth Amendment: search and seizure, going through people's private stuff, threatening them, assaulting their families. And so the founders said, okay, you have the right to form well-regulated militias, as well as the right to keep people from going through your stuff without a warrant. So one of my reasonable friends who are former military or gun owners or hunters might say, this woman seems lovely and these are great ideas, but how do I know they'll stop there? How do I know the hippies won't go take my hunting rifle away?
Well, I think that is a question of, we have not been able to even get very, very modest,
Right.
very, very modest common sense with the state, gun safety legislation, including people who are on a no-fly list, not being able to purchase.
Are you
weapons.
kidding me?
No, I'm not
People
kidding
on
you.
no-fly lists can purchase weapons? That does not make me feel safer as I'm about to get on a flight tomorrow.
That doesn't make any sense. Certainly you can express your fear, but no one is trying to curtail the use of a hunting rifle, or my colleague, a colleague from Minnesota, who is a hunter. He said, when I go hunting, do you know how many shots I can fire? 3.
Oh, wow.
3.
Oh, my
you
gosh.
have a high-capacity magazine. It's 100.
Oh, my
whatever
gosh.
it is.
Yes.
So that for people who I want to just say to them, let us get to those places where we can have a system that can track for people who should not be.
I mean, I have to say, in a surveillance society where my cell phone knows everywhere I'm going, you know, and if I lose it in a taxi, it does seem extraordinary that a gun can go around the country without anyone knowing where it's gone.
It disappears.
Yeah.
It disappears into the system.
So this seems incredibly reasonable, and let me just, like, devil's argument. I mean, so reasonable. One of the things I do notice is that some gun control advocates on the left or on the Democratic side never even rhetorically say there's any reasonable human being who would ever have a gun in his or her house. And I think that that creates an atmosphere, just like on the other side. I know all too many people who are Second Amendment supporters who never say the sane, sensible things about gun control. Like a lot of my friends who own guns do want background checks, do want to close loopholes, do want crazy people want to get guns. So is there a way that, you know, both sides could people want to come to the middle to create like sane bipartisan policy? We could modify our
that you could do that. But the atmosphere gets polluted,
yes,
if you will, and the NRA will pollute
Talk
the
about
atmosphere.
That. Tell me
the
how
National
that
Rifle
what you
Association has had an unbelievable effect on a reasonable dialogue and debate within the United States. On that Dickey amendment that I spoke about,
okay, that was the one stopping people from researching gun violence at the
research. The NRA put an inordinate amount of pressure on members of Congress to pass the legislation.
And how do they pressure them?
They do that with their money.
I see.
They say, well, I'm not support.
I'll withhold my check.
I won't support. I won't. Not only will I not support you in your election or re-election, but I will mobilize against you in your election or re-election.
Wow.
And they have had an unbelievable impact on the debate and the dialogue.
So people who want more sensible gun laws in this country from both sides of the political spectrum will also need to mobilize in order to counter that.
You have to do that. And that's why the movement of these young people is so important.
But how do they undercut the NRA?
Well, their voices are strong. They are challenging members of Congress.
Interesting.
And they're going to be voting.
Right.
You know, not too long from now. And you know, they're willing to confront, to say, if you're going to take money from the NRA, we're not going to be with you.
That's really interesting.
You know, and that, you know, look.
But they're getting people to divest. I mean, private corporations, that's extraordinary. Consumer boycotts.
You know, the situation, and I think the young people have caused this, you know, several of the sporting goods stores to say, no, we're not going to sell them. We're not going to, you know, all of these.
Very interesting.
It's the external pressure on the institution that helps to make a difference.
Congresswoman DeLauro, you wanted us to see these ads. Will you explain what they are?
I will explain this. This is something called Machine Gun America. It is in Florida, and the copy is "Shoot Real Machine Guns, an adrenaline rush for the entire family. Fire live rounds in our many unique experiences, take out bad guys and zombies." And it's really customize your own adventure. This is not an adventure when 17 people are killed with an AR-15.
This is truly a disturbing surprise. I'm just going to grab this here. This also
says
says a la carte shooting with machine guns and assault rifles.